Jake Morrison stood in the massive chamber and tried not to show his fear. The room was huge, bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. Crystal walls stretched up so high that the ceiling disappeared into darkness. Strange lights moved through the walls like living things. The air smelled like metal and something sweet that made his nose itch. Next to him, Dr. Lisa Grant checked her tablet one more time. Her hands shook a little as she scrolled through the data they had brought. They both knew this meeting would decide the future of every human alive. 20 billion people on Earth, and the colonies were counting on them. The Galactic Council had called this session 3 weeks ago. Jake still remembered the message that came through the deep space relay. It was simple and cold. Humans will appear before the Council to answer charges. Failure to attend means immediate military action against Earth. The chamber began to fill with aliens. Jake had seen pictures of most of them, but seeing them in person was different. The Vorthok looked like giant lizards walking on 2 legs. Their scales were dark green, and their eyes were yellow slits. When they moved, Jake could hear their claws clicking on the crystal floor. The Zephyrians floated above their seats like ghosts made of blue light. They had no solid bodies that Jake could see, just energy that moved and changed shape. When they spoke, their voices sounded like wind blowing through empty rooms. The Chitrani scared Jake the most. They looked like huge ants, but with 4 arms instead of 2. Their black shells reflected the light from the crystal walls. When they turned their heads to look at the humans, Jake could see his reflection in their large, compound eyes. There were 8 other species in the chamber. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that Jake could not figure out how they moved or breathed. At the far end sat the Eldari. They were tall and thin, with silver skin. No one knew how old they were or where they came from. They never spoke much in council meetings. A deep voice filled the chamber. The council will hear the charges against the human species. The Vorthok representative stood up. His name was General Krex, and he was twice as tall as Jake. Humans are too violent, he said. His voice was rough like rocks grinding together. They have wars all the time, okay? They kill their own kind for land and resources. They will bring this violence to the galaxy if we let them spread. Jake wanted to argue, but he knew he had to wait his turn. Lisa had told him that interrupting the council was one of the worst things he could do. General Krex continued speaking. Look at their history, okay? They had 2 world wars that killed millions. They have weapons that can destroy entire cities, okay? They cannot control their anger or their fear. The galaxy will not be safe with humans in it. A Zephyrian began to speak next. Its voice was soft, but somehow reached every corner of the chamber. Humans reproduce too quickly. In 50 years since they learned to travel between stars, they have built colonies on 17 worlds. Their population grows faster than any species we have seen. They will use up all the resources and leave nothing for others. Jake felt his heart sink. The aliens were not wrong about human population growth. Earth was already crowded, and the colonies were growing fast. But humans were also learning to be more careful with resources. The newer colonies used clean energy and recycled everything. The Chitrani representative made a clicking sound that the translation devices turned into words. Humans are unpredictable. They do not follow proper procedures. They change their plans without warning. Make alliances and break them quickly. Other species cannot trust them to keep agreements. By one, each alien species spoke against humanity. They talked about human aggression, human expansion, human unpredictability. They brought up every war, every mistake, every time humans had acted without thinking first. Finally, it was Jake's turn to speak. He stood up and felt the weight of all those alien eyes watching him. My name is is Commander Jake Morrison. I speak for the United Earth government and all human colonies. His voice echoed in the huge chamber. The charges you've heard are not completely wrong. Humans have fought wars. We have made mistakes, have acted quickly, sometimes when we should have been more careful. Jake paused and looked around the chamber. But you have not heard the whole truth about humans. Yes, we fight, but we also make peace. The same humans who fought world wars also created the United Nations. We learned from our mistakes. He gestured to Lisa. Dr. Grant will show you what humans have accomplished in the 50 years since we joined the Galactic community. Lisa stood up and activated her tablet. Holographic displays appeared in the air above the center of the chamber. Humans have shared their medical advances with 12 species, she said. Our doctors have helped cure diseases that killed millions of aliens every year. The display showed human doctors working alongside alien healers. Humans have also shared our agriculture technology. Our food production methods have ended famine on 6 worlds. More images appeared. Human engineers building cities, human teachers in alien schools, human artists creating works that combined human and alien styles. Humans are not just warriors, Jake said. We are also healers, builders, teachers, and friends. We want to be part of the Galactic community, not conquer it. But Jake could see that the aliens were not convinced. Their faces showed no change in expression. The Vorthok still looked angry. The Zephyrians still drifted like cold wind. The Chitrani still clicked their mandibles in what Jake had learned meant disapproval. The council leader called for the vote. All in favor of declaring humans a threat to galactic peace and ordering their enslavement. One by one, the alien species voted. The Vorthok voted yes. The Zephyrians voted yes. Trani voted yes. Every species voted to enslave humanity except for the Eldari, who said nothing. The final count was 11-0, with 1 abstention. Jake felt the world spinning around him. 20 billion humans would become slaves because of this vote. The colonies would be destroyed. Earth would be occupied by alien armies. Commander Morrison and Dr. Grant will be held until human forces surrender, the council leader announced. Galactic fleets will move to human space immediately. As alien guards moved toward them. Jake looked at Lisa. Her face was pale but determined. This is not over, she whispered. Jake nodded. Humans had survived wars, plagues, and disasters before. They would find a way to survive this, too. The aliens thought they knew what humans were capable of. They were about to learn they were wrong. Captain Ben Rodriguez crouched behind a pile of mining equipment and checked his watch. 6 months had passed since the aliens took over Earth and the human colonies. 6 months of humans working in alien mines, farms, and factories across the galaxy. The aliens thought they had won. They were wrong. Ben touched the small communication device hidden in his collar. It looked like a work badge, but human engineers had secretly changed it into something much more useful. Phoenix to Eagle, he whispered. Are you ready? The voice that came back was quiet but clear. It belonged to Lieutenant Amy Foster, who was working in the mines on a planet called Kepler-4 for 2b 300 light years away. Eagle ready. We have control of the communication array. Rick is standing by on New Eden. Ben smiled. Rick Barnes was an engineer who had been sent to work on one of the agricultural worlds. The aliens had scattered humans across dozens of planets, thinking this would keep them from working together. Instead, it had given humans access to technology and locations all over the galaxy. The resistance had started small. Just a few humans, passing messages to each other during work breaks. But humans were good at making friends and finding ways to help each other. Within 2 months, they had built a secret network that connected human workers on 47 different worlds. Ben looked across the mining facility where he worked. The Cheatroni guards thought humans were too broken to fight back. They were wrong about that too. Every human in the facility was part of the plan. They had been learning, watching, and preparing for this moment. Dr. Lisa Grant was still being held prisoner on a research station orbiting a gas giant. But even she had found ways to help. She had made contact with other imprisoned species and learned things that shocked her. The aliens had done this before. 17 different species had been enslaved by the Galactic Council over the past 1,000 years. But Lisa had discovered something even more important. She found old records that showed something the Council did not know. Humans learned faster than any other species the aliens had ever encountered, while other enslaved species took decades to understand alien technology. Humans figured it out in months. The proof was all around Ben. The mining equipment he was hiding behind had been built by the insectoid Corvini 200 years ago. Human workers had studied it, taken it apart, and put it back together. Now they understood how it worked better than the Corvini did. The same thing was happening on every world where humans worked. Amy Foster had learned to operate Cheatroni, drilling machines that were supposed to take years of training to master. She had done it in 3 months. Rick Barnes had figured out how to make Zephyrian food processors work twice as fast as their creators intended. Human mechanics were improving Vorthok transport vehicles in ways that amazed even their alien supervisors. The aliens had made a huge mistake. They had given humans access to the technology of 12 different species. Humans did not just learn how to use each technology. They learned how to combine them in new ways. Ben checked his watch again. In 30 minutes, humans across the galaxy would begin phase 1 of the plan. It had taken 6 months to coordinate, but they were ready. The plan was simple, but dangerous. Humans would take control of communication systems, power plants, and transportation hubs on as many worlds as possible. They would do it all at the same time, so the aliens could not warn each other or send help. Ben's job was to capture the orbital platform above the planet where he worked. The platform controlled all the mining operations and had the only faster-than-light communication system in the star system. If he could take it, the aliens on this world would be cut off from the rest of their empire. "Phoenix, this is Hawk," came another voice through his communicator. That was Sarah Kim, a former pilot who was working on a Vorthok military base. "I have visual on their fighter squadron. It's 12 ships, all grounded for maintenance, just like Lisa predicted." Lisa had been right about many things. She had told them that alien species did not maintain their equipment the way humans did. They followed schedules instead of checking to see what actually needed to be fixed. This meant that most alien military vehicles would be out of service at any given time. "All teams report status," Ben said into his communicator. One by one, voices came back from across the galaxy. Teams of humans on mining worlds, agricultural planets, research stations, and military bases. Each team was small, usually just 10 or 20 people, but they were all connected, all working toward the same goal. The aliens had underestimated humans in every possible way. They thought human aggression was chaotic and undisciplined. They'd never seen human military training or organization. They thought humans were too primitive to understand advanced technology. They had never seen how quickly humans could learn and adapt. Most importantly, they thought breaking up human families and communities would make humans easier to control. Instead, it had spread human determination and ingenuity across the galaxy. Ben looked at the humans working around him. There was Maria Santos, a former teacher who had learned to operate alien computers better than their programmers. There was Tony Jackson, a mechanic who had figured out how to make alien vehicles run on different types of fuel. There was Dr. Helen Chang, a biologist who had discovered that human medicine could help other enslaved species. None of them looked like warriors. But they were about to start the biggest rebellion in galactic history. 2 minutes, Ben announced quietly. He thought about Earth, where his family was probably working in alien factories right now. He thought about the human colonies that had been destroyed. He thought about Jake Morrison and Lisa Grant, still prisoners of the Council. The aliens had wanted to make humans into slaves. Instead, they had created something much more dangerous. They had created humans with nothing left to lose and access to the technology of a dozen alien civilizations. Ben checked his watch one last time. All teams, this is Phoenix. Operation Freedom begins now. Across the galaxy, humans began to move. The rebellion had started. Ben Rodriguez kicked down the door to the control room and rushed inside. 2 Chatrani guards turned toward him, their compound eyes wide with surprise. They had never expected human slaves to fight back. Ben and his team had studied these insects for months. Kay knew exactly where to hit them. The first guard went down hard when Ria Santos struck its weak spot behind the head with a mining tool. The second guard tried to reach for its weapon, but Tony Jackson was faster. He had learned that Chatrani moved slowly when surprised. Control room secured, Ben said into his communicator. Around him, human workers quickly moved to the alien computer systems. They had practiced this moment for weeks. Similar scenes were happening across the galaxy at exactly the same time. Lieutenant Amy Foster was leading her team through the mining tunnels on Kepler 4 for to be. The Vorthok guards there had been caught completely off guard. They had been watching human slaves for months and had never seen any sign of organized resistance. Amy's team moved like they had been planning this for years, which they had. Every human in the mines knew their job. Some would secure the guard posts, others would take control of the communication systems. The rest would prepare the mining equipment to be used as weapons. On New Eden, Rick Barnes was having an easier time. The agricultural world was guarded mostly by automated systems. The aliens had thought farming humans would be the least dangerous group. They were wrong. Rick had turned the food distribution network into a supply line for the rebellion. Every farm vehicle had been secretly modified to carry weapons and supplies back on the orbital platform. Ben watched his team work at the alien computers. Dr. Helen Chang had figured out how to read G-Tronic computer displays weeks ago. Now she was shutting down the platform's defenses and taking control of the communication array. Ben, we have a problem, Helen said. The aliens are trying to send a distress signal to their fleet. Block it, Ben ordered. Already done. Ready. But this means they know something is happening. Ben nodded. The plan had always assumed that the aliens would figure out what was happening eventually. The key was to move fast and hit as many targets as possible before they could organize a response. His communicator crackled with reports from around the galaxy. Eagle to Phoenix. Mining facility secured. We have control of the local communication hub. Hawk to Phoenix. Military base is ours. All fighters are grounded and under our control. Robin to Phoenix. Agricultural center secure. We have enough food supplies to feed the resistance for months. One by one, reports came in from 47 different worlds. Humans were succeeding far better than anyone had dared to hope. The aliens had made too many mistakes. They had underestimated human determination. They had scattered humans across the galaxy instead of keeping them in one place. Most importantly, they had let humans work with alien technology without understanding how quickly humans could learn. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. Captain Steve Parker had been working as a mechanic on a Vorthok military base for 6 months. The aliens thought he was just fixing their fighter ships. They did not know he had been a pilot in the Earth Defense Force before the invasion. Steve and his team had done more than just maintain the alien fighters. They had studied every system, every control, every weapon. Human pilots learned differently than alien pilots. Aliens followed procedures and protocols. Humans relied on instinct and quick thinking. "Steve, you sure about this?" asked his teammate, Lieutenant Carol Martinez. She had also been a pilot before becoming a slave. "These ships were designed for Vorthok pilots," Steve said as he climbed into the cockpit of an alien fighter. Vorthok think slowly and carefully. They do not make quick decisions, but humans do. The alien fighter was built like a tank, with heavy armor and powerful weapons. But in human hands, it became something the Vorthok had never imagined. Steve fired up the engines and felt the ship respond differently than any human aircraft he had ever flown. Within minutes, Steve and Carol were flying stolen alien fighters above the military base. The few Vorthok pilots who tried to intercept them found themselves facing something they had never trained for. Human pilots who thought faster, moved quicker, and fought in ways that made no sense to alien military doctrine. The rebellion was spreading faster than anyone had expected. On world after world, humans were not just escaping. They were winning. They were capturing alien equipment, freeing other enslaved species, and proving that the Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. Dr. Lisa Grant heard about the rebellion while still trapped on the research station. The alien scientists who guarded her were receiving panicked messages from across the galaxy. Human slaves were fighting back everywhere at once. But Lisa was not just a prisoner anymore. Over the past 6 months, she had been secretly working with other enslaved species on the station. The Corvani had been slaves for 300 years. The aquatic Oceani had been enslaved for 500 years. They had given up hope of freedom long ago, until they met humans. The humans have done it, Lisa told her fellow prisoners. They are fighting back across the galaxy. This is our chance too. The other enslaved species looked at her with something they had not felt in centuries. Hope that Lisa had learned that humans were not the only species who hated the Galactic Council. Every enslaved race had their own reasons for wanting freedom, but they had never had leaders who could organize a galaxy-wide rebellion. Now they did. As reports of human victories continued to pour in, Lisa began to understand something that would change everything. Lians had not just enslaved humanity. They had created an enemy that could unite every oppressed species in the galaxy. The rebellion was no longer just about human freedom. It was about ending 1,000 years of galactic tyranny, and the humans were winning. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the enemy fleet retreat. 1 year ago, he had been a prisoner of the Galactic Council. Now, he commanded the most powerful fleet the galaxy had ever seen. The ship around him was like nothing that had existed before. Human engineers had taken captured alien technology and combined it in ways that amazed even them. The hull was made from Vorthok battle armor, but it was powered by Zephyrian energy cores. The weapons were based on Chitrani designs, but they fired faster and hit harder than the originals. "Admiral, the Vorthok fleet is requesting permission to surrender," reported Captain Carol Martinez from the communication station. Jake looked at the tactical display. 6 months ago, the Vorthok had been one of the most feared military forces in the galaxy. Their heavy battlecruisers had conquered dozens of worlds. Now, their entire fleet was running from a single human squadron. To tell them to power down their weapons and prepare to be boarded, Jake ordered. The transformation had been incredible. After the initial rebellion, humans had not just freed themselves. They had begun to win battles that should have been impossible. Human tactics confused alien commanders who had been trained to fight slow. Predictable wars. Dr. Lisa Grant entered the bridge, carrying a datapad. She had been rescued from the research station 3 months ago and now led the most important scientific project in human history. Her team was analyzing technology from every species in the galaxy and finding ways to improve all of it. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa said, showing him the datapad. We just finished analyzing the Oceani underwater cities that joined us last week. Their technology is incredible. Jake looked at the information. The Oceani had been enslaved for 500 years, but they had secretly continued developing their science. Their underwater cities could move through space like ships. They had cloaking technology that could hide entire fleets. How many allies do we have now? Jake asked. 17 species have joined the coalition, Lisa replied. Every enslaved race in the galaxy wants to fight alongside us. The Corvani have contributed their manufacturing technology. The Oceani have given us their stealth systems. Others are providing resources, ships, and soldiers. But Jake knew the real reason they were winning. It was not just the technology or the numbers. It was something deeper. For the first time in 1,000 years, the oppressed species of the galaxy had hope. Captain Amy Foster had discovered the truth about the Galactic Council 3 months ago while investigating a captured Chitrani command ship. The files she found changed everything humans thought they knew about the galaxy. Amy was now standing in the intelligence center of the human fleet, briefing Jake and his commanders. The council species are not warriors, she explained. They have not fought their own battles in over 800 years. They use enslaved species as their military forces. So the holographic display showed the structure of the council's power. The 12 ruling species lived on heavily defended core worlds. They had billions of slaves, but only a few million actual council members. Their entire system depends on keeping enslaved species separated and hopeless, Amy continued. When humans showed that rebellion was possible, it inspired every other enslaved race to fight back. Jake studied the tactical situation. The council was desperate. They had sent diplomatic messages offering to negotiate. They had offered to free some enslaved species in exchange for peace. They had even offered to give humans full membership in the council. But humans had learned something important about the council. They were cowards, without their slaves to fight for them. They had almost no military power. Captain Ben Rodriguez had proved this during the battle for the Chitrani homeworld. The Chitrani had been one of the most aggressive council species. They had voted to enslave humanity and had supervised human slave camps on dozens of worlds when human forces attacked their planet. The Chitrani had expected their enslaved Corvani soldiers to defend them. Instead, the Corvani had joined the human attack. Without their slaves, the Chitrani military had collapsed in less than a day. The same thing was happening across the galaxy. As human-led forces liberated more worlds, more enslaved species joined the coalition. Each new ally brought their own technology, knowledge, and reasons for wanting revenge against the council. Rick Barnes had become the chief engineer for the entire human fleet. He was working on a project that would have been impossible just 1 year ago. Using technology from 8 different species, his team was building ships that were faster, stronger, more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The council ships are built for intimidation, not real fighting, Rick explained to Jake during a planning meeting. They are big and slow because they were designed to scare enslaved populations, but human ships are built for war. The proof was in every battle. Human commanders like Steve Parker were leading mixed squadrons of fighters from different species. The combination of human tactics with alien technology was devastating. Enemy fleets that had ruled the galaxy for centuries were being destroyed by forces they had never imagined possible. But Jake knew the real war was not being fought in space. It was being fought in the minds of every enslaved being in the galaxy. For 1,000 years, the council had maintained power by convincing their slaves that resistance was hopeless. Humans had proved that was a lie. The communication system on Jake's ship activated. It was a priority message from the Galactic Council. Jake had been expecting this for weeks. The message was from General Krex, Forthok, who had led the charge to enslave humanity 1 year ago. His voice was different now. Instead of the confident growl, Jake remembered, Krex sounded frightened and desperate. Admiral Morrison, the Council requests immediate negotiations. We are prepared to discuss terms for a ceasefire. We can offer significant concessions. Jake looked around the bridge at his officers. Humans who had been slaves 1 year ago were now commanding the most powerful military force in galactic history. Former prisoners were now liberating entire worlds. The beings who had voted to enslave humanity were now begging for mercy. Jake opened the communication channel. His voice was calm and steady when he replied, General Krex, humanity will accept nothing less than complete surrender. Have 1 week to prepare your final offer. The war was almost over, and the galaxy would never be the same. Admiral Jake Morrison walked into the same crystal chamber where his people had been condemned to slavery 18 months ago. But everything was different now. Where alien representatives had once sat in judgment, they now knelt on the floor, with their hands bound. The massive chamber was surrounded by human and allied forces. Captain Ben Rodriguez stood guard near the entrance with a squad of former slaves who were now elite soldiers. Lieutenant Amy Foster monitored the communication systems to make sure no council ship could escape the planet. The crystal walls that had once seemed so magnificent now looked fragile and weak. Human engineers had studied the building and found that it was designed more for show than defense. It's like everything else about the council. It was built to impress rather than protect. General Krex, the Vorthok, who had led the vote to enslave humanity, was on his knees in the center of the chamber. His scales had lost their dark green color and turned pale with fear. The same alien who had called humans too violent to exist was now trembling before human commanders. Please, Krex said, his rough voice barely above a whisper. We were wrong about humans. We see that now. We'll give you anything you want. Our worlds, our technology, our resources. Hush. Just please do not destroy us. Next to him knelt the Zephyrian representative who had argued that humans reproduced too quickly. The being of blue energy was flickering weakly, like a candle about to go out. We offer our energy cores, our knowledge of faster-than-light travel, everything we have. We only ask for mercy. Jake looked around the chamber at the other council members. Each one was begging for their life. The Chitrani were clicking their mandibles in distress. The other species were offering tribute, technology, even their home, worlds in exchange for survival. It was exactly what Jake had expected. Dr. Lisa Grant had been right about the council members. They were not warriors or leaders. They were bullies who had hidden behind enslaved armies for so long that they had forgotten how to be brave. You seem to have forgotten something, Jake said, his voice echoing through the chamber. 18 months ago, you sat in those seats up there and voted to enslave my entire species. You did not care about our children, our families, or our lives. You saw us as nothing more than useful animals. The alien representatives flinched at his words. Some tried to speak, to make excuses, but Jake continued. You told us we were too violent, too dangerous, too unpredictable to be free. You were right about one thing. We are dangerous, but not in the way you thought. Dr. Lisa Grant stepped forward. She was no longer the nervous scientist who had tried to defend humanity with charts and data. Months of leading the coalition's scientific efforts had changed her into someone confident and strong. What makes humans truly dangerous is not our weapons or our anger, Lisa said. It is our memory. We remember every kindness and every cruelty. We remember who helped us and who betrayed us. She gestured to the chamber around them. But we also remember something you have forgotten. We remember what it means to choose between revenge and justice. The alien representatives looked confused. They had expected humans to kill them or enslave them in return. That was what they would have done. It was what they had done to 17 other species over the past 1,000 years, Captain. Steve Parker entered the chamber, leading a group of representatives from the liberated species. The Corvani, who had been enslaved for 300 years, walked beside the Oceani, who had been prisoners for 500 years. Behind them came delegates from 15 other species that had suffered under council rule. The coalition has made its decision, Jake announced. You will not be enslaved. You will not be executed, but there will be consequences for your actions. He activated a holographic display that showed the new galactic map. Your military forces are disbanded. Your weapons are destroyed. Your ability to travel between stars is limited to your home systems for the next 50 years. The display changed to show massive construction projects. You will spend the next century rebuilding everything you destroyed. Every world you ruined, every species you enslaved, every life you took, you will work to repair the damage you caused. General Krex looked up with surprise. You are not going to kill us. No, Jake replied, 'cause, unlike you, we understand the difference between justice and revenge. You will live, but you will live knowing that your victims have become your superiors in every way that matters. Lisa stepped forward again. The Terran Federation will lead the new galactic government. All species will have equal representation. All voices will be heard. No one will ever be enslaved again. The former council members stared in disbelief. They had expected death or enslavement. Instead, they were being given a chance to redeem themselves under human leadership. But Jake was not finished. There is one more thing you need to understand. This chamber will become a memorial for every being who suffered under your rule. And in that memorial, there will be a simple message. The holographic display showed words appearing on the crystal walls in hundreds of different languages. Never again. As the ceremony ended, and the former council members were led away to begin their new lives as ordinary citizens, Jake noticed movement in the shadows of the chamber. An ancient figure stepped forward. It was the elderly representative who had abstained from the original vote to enslave humanity. The silver-skinned being approached Jake with slow, careful steps. You have done well, human, the Eldari said, in a voice that sounded like wind through ancient trees. We have waited a long time for a species with the strength to break the cycle of oppression and the wisdom to choose justice over revenge. You knew this would happen, Kay gasped. The Eldari smiled, an expression that seemed both sad and hopeful. We have lived for many thousands of years. We have seen empires rise and fall. We knew that someday someone would come who could unite the oppressed and defeat the oppressors. We just did not know it would be humans. As Jake left the chamber that had once condemned his species, he thought about the future. The galaxy was free for the first time in 1,000 years. Humans had gone from slaves to leaders in less than 2 years. The species that had voted to enslave them were now working to earn their forgiveness. The Terran Federation would face many challenges in the years ahead. There would be conflicts to resolve, worlds to rebuild, and new threats to face. But humans had proved something important to the galaxy and to themselves. They had shown that the greatest victory was not defeating your enemies, but choosing to be better than them. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of freedom had begun.